a panel discussion today, I reverted back to a roundtable because it seems like so many of us are still in the question phase of all of this. And so what I'm hoping is in about 3 weeks, we could follow up this open discussion with a panel on how firms are working on finalizing plans and moving forward with all of that, because I know we all are needing to get there at some point here. Okay, I'll start. So I'm Patty Peaquin. I am the HR manager at Keller Rohrback, and I am the HR section chair for PSALA. And I want to thank you all for attending our presentation today on returning to the quote new normal considerations for on-site and remote work. So we have basically 4 sections that we can discuss today. One is COVID protocols, one is on-site and remote logistics, another is staffing considerations, and then some other things, housekeeping like commuting, how you're going to work forward into, how people will handle sick time, and a few other items. So let's just jump right in here and talk about COVID protocols. I'm going to start off with the question of what policies and procedures are you considering to maintain as part of your new normal? So this could be, I'm going to retain these processes and procedures for the next 6 months or to year end, through the, and so that's something like, for example, our firm is considering that we'll keep social distancing and some other things in place through the end of the year, again, watching the CDC guidelines. But I'm wondering if others have more rigorous plans and policies and procedures to maintain during COVID. Will you require people to continue to sign in? Will you allow your employees to self-certify? Or are you going to require something more than that? So let's kind of kick off and talk about what policies and procedures you plan to maintain that you put in place during COVID.
Well, I would say that I anticipate that we are going to keep in place what we are required to. So I am already getting pushback on the daily symptom surveys. And I have to every day I have to track people down and tell them you have to do the survey if you're in the office. And I have my little ways of knowing that. I think that will probably be one of the first things to go. I mean, we do have one of those temperature kiosk things, and I could see us maintaining that. And we have designated pathways around the office that people are supposed to walk in these spaces. And we have the plexiglass screens, both, bolted down and movable. We haven't had a specific discussion about, how long are we going to maintain those, but I think the philosophy of my office tends to be we're going to follow what we have to follow, but we're going to push forward as much as we can. So I can see those, unless something goes awry, I could see those things in place till July or August, and then maybe gradually phasing them out. I could also see them in place, longer than that, but I don't think there's been a specific thought about the nuances.
Thanks, Anne. Does anybody else have anything to share about what they plan to keep in place, through transition or through year end? So one of the questions that I have, and I think many do, is will your transition from certain COVID protocols be impacted by getting your own herd immunity within your firm? And are you going to be collecting proof that people have been fully vaccinated? So at KR, we're currently collecting people's certification that they've been vaccinated as they volunteer it, but we're not currently requiring people to provide that. That may change as we transition to more and more people on site, but I'm wondering if other firms have a protocol in place to collect proof of vaccination, or if you're requiring proof of vaccination to come back on site. Is anybody thinking of that? Hi, Jamie.
So I can kind of share what we've been doing. We have made vaccines. We aren't making them mandatory. We're making them voluntary. Obviously, we are not a healthcare organization, so our leaders did not want to say you have to get this vaccine. But we did create a policy to incentivize people to get vaccines. So we are providing PTO credit for you going for your first and second shots. So first shot, we're doing 3-hour PTO credit, and second shot, we're giving you a whole day off so you can recover, because a lot of people are having adverse effects or adverse side effects from the second shot. So, but in order to do that, they have to provide some kind of information to me as the HR director, saying, yes, I actually did get my shots, whether that be an email providing the date or an email providing their COVID card or their COVID shot card. So, and people have been very receptive to that. It doesn't have any HIPAA protected information on it. So people are happy to provide that card. At least I have not gotten any pushback yet. So that's what we've been doing. In regards to, we still haven't figured out if we're requiring people to have the vaccine when they're in the office. Basically what we have in our policy right now is that everybody who's in the office in a common area still has to wear a mask and still has to do social distancing, whether or not you have a vaccine or not. So.
I think that those are great trends that I think several firms are following, but I'm wondering if other people have anything more formal in place about proof of vaccination or, as Jamie referenced, mask wearing on site, and if anybody's going to be changing that.
We do at Summit have a pretty set standard that we've had in place, and we're going to continue to keep in place until the mandate is lifted by the state. We will, whether you have a vaccination or not, you will continue to wear masks when you are on site in any kind of communal area. We're lucky here, everybody has a separate office, so we don't have to worry about workstations. So even the staff can, have their own space and take their mask off and be okay with that. We'll still have the hand washing upon entry. We'll still have the health screening every day. We'll still have all of those things on site until that's been lifted by the state or CDC. We are also not requiring vaccinations. There have been some pretty interesting discussions by the leadership about that. We just don't feel, some of us just don't feel like it is appropriate to mandate that. We are asking people to self-recognize with our HR so that we can track in the case of maybe not in the future, maybe not doing travel quarantines, or maybe not doing a quarantining if somebody does happen to get sick in the office. Maybe then those people that are vaccinated don't have to go home and quarantine or go get a COVID test or things like that. But once again, we're kind of waiting on the CDC to come up with some standardization around that before we enforce it. But we've had some pretty strict guidelines from the beginning, and so it seems it's worked really well. I'm knock on wood right now. We haven't had anybody in office that's had COVID, so it's definitely worked for us, and we find that maintaining it is actually going to be pretty easy.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have something that they want to share on the lines of COVID protocols and how you're handling returning people to on-site?
Yeah, I know at our office, we put employees in 2 buckets, the vaccinated and non-vaccinated employee. And so we've kind of had established several vaccine clinics for employees to receive the vaccine in 2 stages, 1 shot, and then the second. And then we also allow employees to actually upload their information to a vaccine pass, which allow them to actually come into the office, and it will set aside basically opportunities for them if they do not vaccinate, a certain protocol for those who vaccinated and non-vaccinated employees.
Great, thanks, John.
I have a question in the chat from Gil. Can employers require vaccination information from employees?
So my understanding at a while back was that we can require that information. Since then, it seems a little bit sticky on if that's a hard yes or not. I don't know if anybody else has found anything specific on either mandating vaccines to return to work or mandating that you must provide vaccination information.
So I looked into this early on, similar to you, Patty, and the answer I got from our labor and employment attorney is at this time, you can require that. However, they were thinking it might be a little bit iffy and the courts may overturn that based on some other type of case law, but so far that doesn't seem to be the case. We've decided not to require, where it's still Reeves, I decided not to require vaccinations to return to work, but we are doing things to incentivize people to get vaccines.
Great. Are your incentives similar to what was described by Jamie in terms of time off and that kind of stuff? Or are you doing something more?
Yeah, two things. We're doing PTO for people. They get 4 hours for each vaccine. So if you did Johnson & Johnson, you only got 1 4-hour block. But we also offered that to people who were medically unable to do it and or had sincere strongly held religious beliefs that prevented them from doing it. But we've also, to kind of get an idea of how many people are vaccinated in each office, we created a vaccination incentivization page on our portal, and every person who gets a vaccine enters their name. You can enter it, if you get 2 shots twice, 1 shot once, and then we do a monthly drawing, and the winner from each office will get a $50 Amazon card.
Oh, nice.
And but we did have to say that you can register on here even if you can opt in but not be taking the vaccine, but had people identify. And then we're taking the numbers and we have like a scrolling tally on our portal page that tells us the percentage of vaccinations in each office.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thanks.
So
I want to add, so if any of you chose, if you are an employer of 500 or less under the FFCRA leave that was granted last year, if you chose to extend your leave under ARPA starting April 1st, there's actually an incentive there. Employees can use sick leave for expanded reasons under ARPA. Including getting vaccines and then also recovering from side effects from vaccines, but you had to opt into that. So I know we did that here at Hillis Clark and have been, making sure that people are aware that you don't have to use, vacation or sick time. You can use this FFCRA leave, which is nice because you can't necessarily control what, time your appointment is. You can't always get after work. So it's a nice incentive there, but we haven't introduced any other sort of, incentives for that here, at least at this time.
So Veronica, we too opted into that FFCRA April 1st and have been encouraging people to use that time for any COVID related, getting vaccinated, et cetera. And the benefit is you do get a tax credit at the end of the year, which our accounting department is not thrilled to have to deal with, but that's what we're doing.
For sure.
So, yeah. Any other comments or questions about this specific area?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm not a really big up on HIPAA, but I was told that I can't even ask an employee if they've been vaccinated because it's a HIPAA violation.
No,
What do
that's
people
not.
think about that?
No.
No, you can ask. It's
Okay.
when you start asking more questions that it gets sticky. There's really good guidance on the EEOC put out some guidance on return to work generally, but Section K, that 31-page document, has some really good Q&As on vaccinations and what you can ask. When does it start to become a medical inquiry? Because that's the risk that you run. And so, yeah, that's a really good publication. I printed it and highlighted it, and I read it when I can't sleep at night.
Oh, God. We need
Thanks.
calming sounds for you, Veronica. So the other question I have is, to what extent are you going to keep any COVID policies and procedures or best practices in place to help your employees feel comfortable returning? And how long would you keep those in place? So for example, obviously as the world opens up, the best example is sporting events or a rock concert where, there's going to be closer and closer proximity. I find it interesting that people are excited about those things, but still the returning to work causes that anxiety level in terms of proximity to coworkers and COVID. So for example, are you thinking of maintaining mask wearing through the end of the year, even though that may not be necessary? Are you thinking about any sort of protocols that you would keep in place just because it would make the employees feel safer?
I think we're following the governor, and whatever the state recommends, that's what we're doing. We're just making him make all the decisions. I think the whole sporting event and concert thing is because they're outside.
Yeah, good point. How about plexiglass in areas? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I think, to reiterate what I said before, we're going to, like Sue, we're going to follow the government. However, our firm manager is married to a Japanese woman. So, he's very into the idea of mask wearing just as a general good thing to do. So I could see us really encouraging people to feel comfortable wearing masks at any time, as many times as they want, and to not just try to make it a black and white thing, but just to, and I see a lot of comments on social media from people saying, wow, I haven't had a cold all year.
Right.
I think I might keep doing this. And, I'm sure we'll revert to some of our old habits, but if it becomes more socially acceptable, I could see it maybe not being mandated, but being supported and encouraged.
Right. Great point.
I think so. We are also sending out surveys to people, asking them what their level of concern is. I mean, if they're feeling excited to come back to the office, are they nervous? And then there's a drop down when, if they're nervous, why are they nervous? And there's a list of few things that they can pick out just to kind of get a good assessment about how people are feeling. And I think generally the management and the executives are going to figure out from those responses how we're going to proceed in some ways, and then also in tandem with what the local governments are suggesting as well.
Great. So I found a great survey and also kind of a return to work basic checklist on SHRM, and I'll share those following this session because I thought they were great and helpful. So one of the things we've done, and it sounds like a lot of other firms have done, is hoteling during COVID so that everybody is working in a private workspace when they're coming on site, or to the extent that firms are able to do that they are. So one of the things we're looking at is the need for plexiglass between certain legal assistant workstations or other areas where there's close proximity. And one person asked whether people are going to put plexiglass dividers in workspaces at lunch tables or a variety of different areas. Is anybody else contemplating that?
We put them between workspaces last year. So they've been up for, initially they were kind of like, 4x4 size, roughly, plexiglass things that just they're movable. So they can just sit on the outside of the workstation. And then we got some standing ones that are maybe 6 feet tall that are actually whiteboards. So people kind of like them because they can,
That's cool.
put notes on them. Yeah. And we put them like between the workstations.
Okay.
So we've had those in place for quite a while. And I haven't been in any conversations where people have talked about getting rid of them, but you know, I could see those staying in place for a long time because I think they do add a measure of comfort and you can see through them except for the standing ones. So that's kind of easy to negotiate in a way.
Right. I think in our lunchroom and in other areas, we're just going to keep the distancing of chairs and stuff in place and return it as, you know, we have the ability to do so, and this recommended by CDC and such. The final question I'm going to pose in the COVID area is if anybody is looking to add air filtration or other things that your building is not already offering to you. Are you looking into that? Is that important to you? Or are you feeling satisfied with what your buildings are doing? We're not doing anything in addition.
We're not either. And I've looked at the building process before and it's really high end. So I think it's pretty good. But I also just read a newer study that came out, I don't know, in the last month or so, indicating that that's really not your best line of defense. That by the time the air goes through the filter system, it's too late. It's already gotten to you. So yeah. It's the mask and the distancing that are really the better protocol.
We were putting some filtration or like filters or air filters in some of our conference rooms when we get more people together in one room, but I think it's more of a psychological thing versus any real impact on improving the air. So, but we have them available for people who are concerned.
Great.
Yeah, we just, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
At BB&L, we actually just started a DOH hearing. We have trials starting next week as well. So we have a lot of changes kind of happening in that realm, and the lovely uncomfortability of not only our clients, but even the attorneys in conference rooms. So we have also placed purifiers in conference rooms. But I kind of agree that it seems a little more placebo-y than anything else at this point, but that in itself can be helpful also.
Right. Okay. Any other questions related to kind of COVID policies and procedures and how we're going to move forward with those pieces?
I have a kitchen question. In
Yeah,
the beginning, yeah, when COVID first came out, you know, it was like you can't use mugs. You have to buy all this compostable plates, and so you know. So I spent a fortune on all that stuff. And then they decided, well, it's not really spread on the surfaces. And so you could use the dishwasher and all that stuff. So what are people doing about that? Do I have to keep on buying compostable paper plates, or can we go back to using mugs?
Been using our mugs and plates and silverware all along. You know, they go right, everybody has to clean up. There's only 3 people in the kitchen allowed at a time. You have to clean up after yourself, which includes rinsing your dishes and putting them in the dishwasher and cleaning out the sink. And there's been so few people in the office, although, well, anyway, that hasn't been a problem, but we have used ours all along. We also have compostable for those who want to use it, but yeah.
We've used ours all along as well. We have signage all around, you know, as people enter the kitchen, wash your hands when you enter the kitchen. We figure if you're washing your hands before you're touching anything, you're good. And if you eat in the kitchen, then you just sanitize your workspace before you leave. It's worked for us. And we've had people in, I mean, not huge numbers, but since the beginning.
Thanks.
At KR, we were strictly compostable for a long period of time, but as information has come out and a lot more confidence that it's not spread by touch base, we've moved back to glassware, but still have the compostable stuff for people to use. So there we go. Okay, so was somebody else? Oh, Jamie, did you have something you wanted to talk about?
I was just curious what people are doing in regards to transportation, because that has been the biggest issue with a lot of people in at Ryan Swanson. We have a lot of people who take the bus or take the train or take the ferry. And I think one of the big concerns is once everybody starts commuting again, we're going to get into those jam-packed buses. I mean, I've taken the bus a few times in this pandemic, and right now it's great. There's only like maybe 10 people on the bus when I get on the bus. But, you know, if we go back to quote unquote normal, they're just going to keep packing people on the bus as much as they can. So I'm curious, you know, we, for our essential staff, we offer parking reimbursement right now because they have to be there every day. And if we do have somebody who has to be in the office because one of our attorneys say so or one of the directors say so, then we will reimburse them as well. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Or what are other people considering for transportation going forward?
Hi, this is Sel Davis. At BPM, we actually switched, took away all of the monthly parking passes from all of the directors at the firm and switched to a validated parking situation. So anyone, staff member, anyone coming into the office just needs to get their parking validated and they don't have to pay for it. We're going to do that through the end of the year. I don't know that we're gonna go back to you know, monthly parking for the directors, only because I don't know that anyone is gonna actually be here 5 days a week to really make that, you know, viable. It's just easier to do the validated parking, and we think it's working really well now. We'll see what happens when people, you know, more people start coming back to the office, but it's working really well. And, you know, we're saving all that money on the, what, the $40,000, $50,000 a year on the Orca passes. I can see this going forward in that way.
We're paying for staff. We're paying for everyone's parking. They're not coming in every day. We have maybe 25 to 30 people in every day. And a few of them don't have cars. And so they take the bus or walk. But anybody that wants parking gets it.
We did something that, and I wasn't part of this, and I thought, well, this is kind of odd, but I'm actually kind of liking it. So what we're doing is, if you are physically in the office that day, we will add $10 to your pay for the day. So I track, you know, the attendance anyway, because I'm checking to see who's done their symptom surveys if they've come in. So that piece was easy. And then I just turn that over to the payroll person. And, you know, that you're free to use the $10 any way you wish. And if you're walking or bicycling, hey, you're $10 ahead. So, and it seems to have worked out fairly well.
So at Keller Rohrback, we're kind of doing a lot of what other people are doing. So currently we're paying for parking, we'll fund an Orca pass, load money on it. You can use Lyft or Uber. But I think our plan is in July, assuming everything goes well, is to allow people to return on a voluntary basis. And at that time, we will fund Orca cards for those people and will not be providing paid parking at that point. But we still have to consider how we're going to handle the critical and essential people that we require to be on site. And you know, the disparity between those two, how will we deal with that? So that's something we have to consider. Anybody else? Okay, let's go on to the on-site versus remote logistics. When are people thinking of planning for people to return to, whether it's full-time on-site or a hybrid or full-time remote? What are your plans, and when are you thinking of implementing?
Our plan at last year is July, mid-July, after the 4th, but that is all dependent on what happens if the county goes back to phase 2. Yeah. And in mid-July, when we bring people back in the office, it'll be on a staggered schedule, every other day, pretty much.
That's kind of what we're doing at BPM. We've decided that the time period between July 4th and Labor Day, we, again, as Carol said, that, you know, provided King County does not go backwards, we will give people that time to sort of adjust to coming into the office, and we'll be really flexible about when you have to come in, how you have to come in, that kind of thing. And then after the Labor Day holiday, we'll probably be a little bit more, we'll do a little bit more structured scheduling so that people are in the office. We're coming up with some sort of a hybrid, whether it's 3 days a week in the office and 2 days a week out. We haven't done that yet. We haven't come to that yet. And what we're doing with the legal assistants is we're going to give them the option to work with the person who covers for them when they're not here. Even though they'll be working remotely, as you all know, there's stuff that needs to be done that's in the office. So we're going to have the legal assistants work with their cover person, and they can decide which 2 or 3 days a week they want to be in the office, just as long as one of them is always here.
Great.
BB&L, actually, we already have, I believe 26 is the limit that we can currently have in our office at one time. We've already gone to a standard of, for legal assistants, Monday, Tuesday, we have 1 legal assistant per workstation, and Wednesday is a free floater day, depending on trial or things like that. And then Thursday, Friday is the other desk mate of that legal assistant's timeframe in the office. Paralegals, it's a little bit different, as you know, a lot of their work they can do from home and they don't have to deal with the scheduling and things like that the same way they would with attorneys, depending on what it is. As we've kind of gotten into this as well, there's always been those grand plans of like what we're going to do, and then you find out that an employee works really, really well from home.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got that crux where, okay, well, if you bring this person back in, there's, you know, the possibility that their work, you know, may go down a little bit, and then finding ways to adapt to that. I think for us, that's kind of the biggest thing at this point, where I'd say about 90% of our paralegals will be in 1 to 2 days a week, depending on trial. And the legal assistants will be in 2 days a week. And then admin, you know, we get the hose a little bit on that. So we're going to be in all the time. But currently that's working for us. Like I said, we are going into our first real big situation with having a hearing this week. All of those things are changeable, as opposed to having reception track all of that time. I'm currently dealing with having a set amount of attorneys that can be on site every week as well, and also basing that on trial calendars, and then dealing with the swapping back and forth for which LAs and staff can be on site.
Great.
We've actually had a benefit in the fact that we just got started a remodel a week and a half ago. So we've been doing a lot of preparatory work, getting ready for that for the last year, because it was supposed to start right about the time COVID started. So of course, then everybody's like, oh my God, and nobody's here. Why would we spend ungodly amounts of money to remodel the firm? So it's been a lot of back and forth, and we've had a whole lot of surveys over that time frame with everybody in the firm. What's your feeling on this? How is this working for you? What are we doing here? So we've been able to really push a little bit faster, I think, than a lot of other places, because we needed the answers to, you know, cement the remodel, get that started, that kind of thing. And, you know, what I found is the attorneys, their viewpoint of work from home has absolutely flipped, especially the litigators, which were absolutely 100% on site every day, no exceptions, period, kind of thing. And we've really left it in the hands of the employees. We created, I love Smartsheet, live and die by it. And so I, you know, pushed out a bunch of stuff to really inquire what it was that they needed. Everybody needed to be able to function well. And we now have a true work from home policy, not this temporary mandated work from home policy that came with COVID, but we've developed a policy, we've developed a protocol, and it's everything from some people that want to be here 100% of the time to some people that want to be out 100% of the time. And it's everything in between. It's really been so much smoother than I could have ever anticipated us getting to the situation, and the attorneys really sitting back and going, will this work for me? You know what, it will. And this is why, and these are the things. And, you know, and I've really appreciated that. We're planning, our remodel ends in July. So we're hoping our return to work is August 1st-ish. And we'll kind of get people coming back in the door at that point. And fingers crossed that we don't roll back too far and we're able to keep going with that. But it's really been a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be, just getting everybody to, and they've bought in. I mean, they're just excited about the return to work, which is really good. Even if it's just 1 or 2 days a week, it's not this hesitation of, oh, I'm uncomfortable. A couple people are like, I want to make sure that X is in place before. Okay, fine. We can work with that. Your kids are back in school in September, whatever. We can definitely work within that parameters. And by giving them the right to make those choices and suggest those choices, instead of it being mandated, you have to be here Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Friday, whatever. The buy-in is exceptional, absolutely exceptional.
Can I ask a quick question about what people might be doing? I know that I've read some articles about different things about almost enticing employees back just for that collaboration and make sure that the office culture is happening. And so we're really looking at ways to kind of spiff up our space and make it more enticing, or a kind of a wow moment for when people come back and go, oh, that's really cool. So is anyone else looking at fun ways that they are kind of reimagining their office space so that when people do return, they're a little delighted with what they see?
We're looking to cut space. So if anyone out there wants 10,000 square feet with probably some furniture and filing cabinets, please contact me, because it kills me to write a rent check in the tens of thousands of dollars every month. I mean, most of our employees here at Reed McClure have been here 20, 30 years. They don't have any desire to come back into the office, and we're not going to force them to. So we're looking to cut our space in half. So if anyone wants to take on this space till 2026, you call me, please. I'll treat you to lunch, cocktails at the Capitol Grill, you name it, because it's painful. It's really painful as a small firm doing insurance defense work and paying outrageous rent. This office is gorgeous. We have some fabulous Northwest art. It's a great place to come every day, but it's becoming a very, very expensive storage unit for furniture and paper.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are going to have to be looking at space issues. But before we kind of delve into that area, I'm going to put firms in 3 buckets, and you decide what bucket you're in. So this is my labeling. But we have the progressive firm who says, you do you, come in if you want, don't come in if you want, just get the work done. We've got the firms that are middle, where they want to have some structure and ability to have a schedule where staff come in. And then we have the conservative firm who says, nope, I want everybody back on site, and too bad, so sad, that's what we're doing. So if you're in one of those buckets, can you kind of describe, I mean, we've heard from Kristen, kind of that more progressive vibe and the success of that, but I have a feeling there's many firms that are kind of in this middle of the road piece where it's been working really great, but we still have uncertainty if employees are really working every day. And I know not all attorneys feel that way, but some do. How are you looking at meeting the firm's sense of need of structure for a return to work?
Maybe I'll jump in real quick. We're actually firmly in bucket 1. So much of what Kristen said applies to us, but I want to add that we're sort of kicking the can down the road a bit, because we think it'll take time for people to figure out what actually works for them and the teams. Because when we surveyed people, they've been very clear that, oh yeah, I never want to set foot in the office again, and except for some who can't wait to set foot in the office again. But we're not sure that that's actually going to work. And we have the space, to Gil's point. We have several years left in a lease. Also, a beautiful office downtown, expensive storage unit. So we're going to use this time to just let things shake out and see what actually works. So our next lease is no doubt going to be a smaller place with some people in the office full time, and a lot of people just coming in as needed. And how you maintain a good culture in that firm is the challenge. Anyway, that's me.
I would say our firm is split between 2 and 3, middle and conservative. And right now there's sort of a culture war happening. And we're taking the time to reevaluate our whole office space and our whole vibe, and actually having like a really in-depth internal conversation. But I think we'll probably skew a little bit more conservative, but I think that'll be more towards the end of the year. Until then, it's a hybrid.
Okay.
We're kind of dividing it by billers versus non-billers. And so our billers kind of get the freedom to do what they want. And I mean, as long as they're hitting their billable requirements, there's not too much of an issue. And even if they're not meeting it, we don't really have an issue with that. But like me in HR, I've never went home, and that was like part of a personal choice to like keep the firm going. But also our legal assistants, we were finding that they weren't as productive at home because they couldn't do certain things at home that they can do here, like the printing and the mailing for their attorneys. And so we've installed like protective measures to keep them safe, and then tell our billers to stay home to reduce the number of people here. But I'd say we probably lean more on the conservative side with things. And that's so far worked really well. We haven't had any COVID outbreaks here, which has been awesome because our people are really good at keeping their masks on and respecting each other's space and stuff.
Got a question kind of along the lines, maybe for those of you that have taken more of a progressive path on this. Kristen, you specifically mentioned that you've got some people who don't come into the office ever, sort of different, you kind of pick what's most comfortable with you. One of the things that I'm concerned about as I contemplate something like that is that feeling of resentment that may arise from people who come in every day and people who are, for whatever reason, choosing not to come in, then asking those who are in the office, oh, can you find this document? Can you mail this out? Can you do this thing? How have you, I guess, addressed that? Because that's one of my big concerns about having a more, I think, laissez-faire approach to, scheduling.
Okay, I will say that it may sound laissez-faire. It's really not. One thing I made people commit to is, if you're going to be in one day a week, that's fine, but it's a set day. I know what it is. It's on this. People have that expectation that you are going to be there and you are going to try to limit your work in such a way that if you have physical work that needs to be done, for the most part, it is on the days you are in the office. It was also multiple discussions with practice group leaders and things like this that would then take it to their groups and say, okay, we want to make sure that this works for everybody. So if you guys can naturally stagger over a course of a week, if you can, so that there is somebody within your group, because during COVID, we've had one legal assistant on site the whole time and one paralegal on site the whole time. But then when we went to phase 2 a while back, we opened it up and said, is there anybody else who would like to come back on site? Instead of limiting, is there anybody else? And we had, a handful of staff that said, you know what, I just want to be on site. That's it. It's my preference. So they came back there. It's worked out really well to have them on site just because of the nature of the work that they're doing. But it was part of the discussion when we laid this out. It's like, this is holistic. Although we want to really make sure you as an individual getting what you need to work, we need to really have a holistic approach to this whole thing. Your practice group has to be, be able to maintain itself. The firm as a whole needs to be able to maintain itself. We can't expect that there's going to be somebody around doing your bidding, from home. We've also highly encouraged everything electronic that we can possibly do, from electronic remote notaries to, changing our faxing system so it's not this antiquated analog system and it's all done via, Ring Central now. I mean, so there's things that we've definitely put into place to try to accelerate the technology to support that, that there's less physical, but they also understand that if there's a trial going on and you need to be here and you're only one day a week, then you need to be here every day. It's a give and take, and it's a trust factor, and it's something I think that Summit prides itself on, that everybody has a voice and everybody can make grown-up professional decisions. And if you don't, we're going to make you accountable for that, but we expect that you're going to do that. And so we're kind of running with that, and it could backfire in 1 or 2 instances, but we'll deal with those when those instances come up.
So I think that is a lot of what our firm has done, but actually we're about 130 people in Seattle. We took our float position and transitioned that to an on-site support person for our legal assistants. So if anything had to be printed, signed, mailed, and the attorneys were on site, whatever, all those legal assistant on-site needs were being met by that float. We are now looking to add another person for that role so that our legal assistants have more flexibility and ability to work remotely. Heather at Cozen recently posted an office assistant position that's kind of similar of what we're looking to add. And that is somebody who can, deal with working notebooks, do scan projects, a variety of different things that maybe our office services aren't fully equipped. And we're able to do this because we, through attrition, ended up having an office services assistant leave. And so we're going to fill that role with somebody who has more capability of supporting our legal assistants on site. One of the things we found, and it could just be our culture, is that those on site were getting bogged down by other people's stuff and not able to fully, do their own work. So that's how KR is looking to solve that challenge. But other firms, may not be able to do that or want to do that.
Got an anchor crew going in all along. And I'm just wondering, because we kind of have that kind of setup, Patty, where we have some assistants who do those things for the legal assistants, the making the binders, the copying, scanning and type thing, the mail handling. But does anyone, what are you thinking when you go forward, if you offer people the choice of going in, or like legal assistants only have to come in 2 days a week, when you have people who do have to be there every day? I'm just anticipating if there'd be any resentment if some positions are required to go in every day.
Right. And I guess what we're trying to do is to talk to people about their jobs and the focus of their position and the realities that, for example, our accounting department needs to be on site. We need office services team members on site. And that's just part of their job description, fulfilling what they do. So far, we haven't had resentment for that. And I think so long as people focus on understanding what their scope and role is, and there's that sense of understanding, it's going to be okay. I do still worry about our desire to be progressive and how legal assistants will work a hybrid role on site, and some attorney expectations that they should be here every day because they prefer to be here every day. So what we're trying to avoid is an attorney preference as the decision maker of people being on site, because that's where I think it starts to feel unfair.
So we're struggling with that as well. And I would categorize us in the moderate stage right now, because we are not coming out with a definitive response. We're saying that we're first going to draft a remote policy for, attorneys and get a sense of how many of them want to come in or don't want to come in, and then work on staff. That did not go over well. I think people took that to mean like we're an afterthought. You're not going to be thinking about us on the same level. But what we're noticing is that, we have, and obviously confidentially within this call, we have a lot of staff, most of our staff are saying like, this is great, I can do this, I'm just as productive, I'm having no problems. But then when you're talking to the attorneys, there's so much more that they're doing because it's easier than to send it to somebody. It's much easier to go out to someone's desk and sit it down. So they're doing a lot of administrative work instead of the billing work. And so a lot of it may be preference driven for us. And that's going to be, I think, a hard pill to swallow. But there are just some people who don't work as well with their team remotely. But I think, my fear is that we'll lose people. If we're not as flexible as we can be, we'll definitely lose people. And then that would be the thing, I think, that would wake people up and see. But right now we're just trying to hold everybody at bay and, see what other people are doing and kind of get our heads around that.
We're experiencing the same thing that you are, Tara, and that is that our attorneys are spending time at the copy machines or sticking something in an envelope. And not everyone. We have some attorneys that my assistant can work full-time from home. She's doing a great job. But there are people here that are, getting the certified mail ready or doing things for her so that she can do her great job from home. So yeah, we're trying to figure it out, make it work for everyone. We have both extremes and a few in the middle, and I don't know what it's going to look like in 2, 4, 6 months.
Yeah, it's so hard to be everything to everyone.
Right.
And in terms of like going back, I mean, we don't have a real definitive answer on that either. We're letting each office decide based on like their numbers, their needs. And so then once some of our offices start opening, and that's been the case, like slower opening, then the people who are in the offices that aren't opening are starting to panic and be like, well, what's our policy? What's our policy? So it's this really weird sort of limbo right now.
Something we talked about doing before the pandemic hit was hiring a couple of Renton Votech legal assistant program graduates and then bringing them on and training them to be legal assistants.
Yes.
I need people in the office to do that. More than one day a week. I need people here. I don't need everyone in here 5 days a week, but I need at least half in here all the time in order for us to do that. So, and then there's we've hired a couple new attorneys, and they're newbies right out of law school. They need to be trained. And, attorneys need to be here working with their mentors. I get the work from home. I do. But it's a pickle.
I'm wondering about whether, performance-based working from home, if in the future, and this is just me talking than thinking, but if that is working from home is based off of performance and performance reviews, and like preferences for being able to work from home is based off of the review process. I'm in the middle of review process, so I think that's why it's on the forefront of my mind, but maybe that's some way to structure the work from home and also cover those people who need to be more in the office. I don't know.
We aren't structuring it that way, but it's definitely part of our work from home policy. If that starts to performance dwindles or something isn't working, that absolutely can be rescinded. So it is definitely written into policy, so it puts the onus back onto the employee.
Yeah, I think Eileen's right, and Kristen too, is if we start to weave in that performance-based carrot into remote work, we'll probably have a better concept. But then still the challenge lies where Tara was talking about, is you can have a great performing individual who's totally on board remotely, but if the attorney is struggling, how are firms going to handle that? Will it be that attorney preference accommodation, or will the firm stand as a whole and say all legal assistants can work remotely 2 days or 3 days a week or whatever it might be, so long as performance is good? And I'm struggling in that same boat. I have an attorney who's having a total panic attack about all of this, and the thought about it going forward as a new normal into the future. So it is a really challenging area.
We also discussed, because my idea was like, let's just, similar to how we did it prior to COVID, if people want to, if they can put in a telecommuting request, their attorneys approve it, great. But then we realized like, well, now we're in this weird situation that you may have 3 attorneys who are like, I don't care, work from home. And then the 4th, who's like, no, you have to be here every single day. And then which, do you like say, okay, well, this person is an associate, so they don't trump the partners on the desk. I mean, it becomes this whole political nightmare.
Well, and Sherry Tip, I see a comment for her, and that this leads into another question, and that is, with attorneys becoming more efficient on site, whether they want to be or not, does that change any ratios and staffing for legal assistants, office services, or other areas? Are you looking to downsize certain positions or roles because of the remote work?
So we actually did go through and start upping attorneys on legal assistance desks, not by a whole lot, because we're not, we hadn't drank that juice yet. But it's worked pretty well. I think we also have 2 administrative assistants that help out with a lot of the day-to-day work that they can help out with when it comes to binders, when it comes to notebooks. We have a Copyers Northwest rep that also works with us as well on that. One of the bigger things that we're actually seeing is the kind of work from home separation anxiety that people end up having when they come in the office, where they don't actually, you have absolutely every capability of going and making your own notebook. You don't need to send this request into office services to do it. But we also have a little bit of the issue too, that now that we're getting into trial, having a couple more attorneys on a legal assistant's desk is great until that legal assistant calls out. And then you have the coverage who now has an extra person on top of their 4-attorney, 5-attorney desk, just depending. So, I mean, it's good and bad for us, at least. If no one ever calls out, then we're great. But unfortunately, these things do happen. But overall, it's worked pretty well so far. We have added, we've added this year, actually, we've added 10 people in the past 2-3 months. And it's been great. But again, as we start to grow, that's definitely an ongoing concern of, as trials become more prevalent for us, are we going to start, dragging our LAs through the dirt here because they're getting overworked? It's kind of yet to be seen.
I kind of have something I want to say, but it's not directly related to this, but I think if you guys haven't encountered it, you're going to, and that's work from home in relation to overhead and profitability. If the discussion has not happened in your firm yet, believe me, it is coming, and it is going to be nasty. Everybody's going to start, well, if I'm not in the office, if my assistant's not in the office, if my paralegal's not in the office, what's the benefit thereof? That and whether it's people working from home might earn less because they don't have to commute. And the people that are coming into the office do. There's those kind of discussions. If they haven't started yet, they will at some point. And every firm's going to handle it differently. So I'm not giving any suggestions. I'm simply saying that just be prepared for those things, because they are going to come up.
So I cannot believe this, but it is almost 1 o'clock, and I think, we've opened the spigot in a broad way of talking about a variety of different issues. And, not only, should we have a follow-up maybe on telecommuting agreements and what people are putting into them, so we all can kind of share best practices, but I still like Eileen's concept of the wow factor. What are you going to do for people who return to onsite? Gil's point about space, and then Kristen's point on overhead, and whether you change compensation, whether you're providing stipends for people who work remotely. There's so much to continue to talk about. So what I'll put out there, we did record this, so if you want to listen to it again, there's that opportunity. But I'm also going to follow up by suggesting some future topics for discussion. And I think similar to what we did when we all had to begin dealing with COVID, maybe we're going to start having more regular HR group meetings to talk about how we're going to get back to the new normal. So if you have specific topics and areas, please reach out to me and let me know what those are. As we get closer to firms making more decisions and having more formality, we'll look to have some panel conversations. So there's lots to sink our teeth into going forward. So I'm open to any suggestions and ideas, and I know Veronica, as the head of education, is too. So thank you again so much for attending today, and be on the lookout for some follow-up.
Thank you,
Thank
Patty.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.